The night my wife leaned in to kiss me goodnight, I turned my face just enough that her lips caught my jaw instead of my mouth. She pulled back and looked at me. "You okay?" she asked. I said, "Save it, Charlene. I know exactly where that mouth has been every Thursday night." She went absolutely still. The kind of still that only happens when the body stops working, because the brain just blew a circuit breaker. Then all the color drained from her face, and I knew, the way I'd known for 11 days already, that everything she was about to say was going to be a lie. She never expected me to be smart enough to figure it out. She was wrong about that. My name is Silas Barker. I'm 52 years old, and for 23 of them I worked as a diesel mechanic and fleet dispatcher for Hardin Freight out of Columbus, Ohio. Not glamorous work, but it was honest, and it paid well enough that we lived comfortably. A 4-bedroom house in Westerville, 2 cars paid off, a vacation fund we actually used. I was good at my job the way men who care about what they do tend to be good at things. I knew every truck in our fleet by sound. I could diagnose an engine problem by the vibration in the cab. I had 15 guys reporting to me, and I'd never once had to write anybody up, because I treated people the way I wanted to be treated. For 18 years, I treated my wife the same way. Her name is Charlene. She's 46, works part-time as a receptionist at a real estate office, and for most of our marriage, she was the kind of woman other men envied me for. Not in any flashy way. She just had this warmth about her, this way of making whoever she was talking to feel like the only person in the room. I fell in love with her at a cookout in the summer of 2006, when I watched her spend 20 minutes talking to my grandmother about her garden, genuinely interested, not performing. I thought, that's a woman worth building something with. And we did build something. It wasn't perfect, no marriage is. But it was real and it was ours. And for 16 of our 18 years, I had no reason to doubt her. The trouble started with my job. Not something I did wrong. Just one of those things that happens to working people when the ledger shifts. Hardin Freight lost 2 major contracts in the span of 4 months and decided to downsize the fleet. They kept the drivers. They cut back-end operations. I was back-end operations. I got my notice on a Tuesday afternoon and was out of the building with a box of my things by 4 o'clock. I told myself it would be temporary. I had skills. I had connections. I started picking up private mechanic work out of the garage, did some consulting for a smaller carrier out of Dayton, put my name out everywhere I could think of. The money wasn't steady, but it was coming in. I figured 6 months, maybe 8, and I'd be landed somewhere solid. Charlene had a different timeline in her head. The change in her was gradual at first. She stopped asking about my day. When I brought up a job lead at dinner, she'd nod, but her eyes were already somewhere else. Usually her phone, which she'd started carrying around the house like a security blanket. Our conversations got shorter. Our evenings got quieter in a way that felt less like peace and more like distance. "You need to figure out something permanent," she said one night. Not looking up from whatever she was scrolling through. "I can't carry the finances by myself." She wasn't carrying them by herself. My income had dropped, sure, but I was still contributing. And her job at the real estate office paid more than she let on. I handled our taxes. I knew the numbers. But I let it go. I told myself stress makes people say things they don't mean. I doubled down on the job search, took on more mechanic work, started leaving the house at 6 in the morning and coming home after dark. What I didn't know was that, while I was grinding myself down trying to save our future, she was spending her Thursday evenings somewhere else entirely. In September, Charlene announced she was joining a fitness studio, one of those boutique places with cycling classes and personal training packages. I didn't have any objection. She'd mentioned wanting to get back into exercising, and I figured if it made her feel better, maybe it would thaw some of the coldness between us. I said, "Sure, sounds good." She signed up that same week. Thursdays became her gym night. She'd leave around 6:30 and be home by 9 or 9:30. Sometimes later, if she and some of the other women went out for smoothies afterward. I didn't question it. That's the thing people never understand about being betrayed. You don't question the things that seem reasonable, because they are reasonable. Going to the gym on Thursday is a completely reasonable thing for a person to do. The cracks started showing around our 18th anniversary in November. I'd made a reservation at a restaurant she'd always wanted to try. Italian place downtown, white tablecloths, the kind of wine list that comes in a binder. It was a splurge I probably shouldn't have made given the state of our finances, but I wanted to remind her of what we had. I wanted to remind both of us. Dinner started well enough. We talked about our kids, our son's new apartment, our daughter's promotion at work. We steered around the topic of money, which took effort on both sides, but we managed. For about an hour, sitting across from her in the candlelight, I could see the woman I'd married. Not the one who scrolled past me in the evenings. The real one. Then her phone buzzed. She checked it under the table, which she thought I didn't notice. It buzzed again 20 minutes later. She excused herself to the restroom, phone in hand, and came back 11 minutes later with something slightly off about her smile. Like she'd put it back wrong. The drive home was quiet. I tried to hold her hand, and she repositioned herself to adjust the heat vent. At home, she headed straight for the shower, came out saying she was tired. She kissed me on the cheek, a reflex, nothing behind it, and went to bed. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time that night, finishing a beer I didn't want, turning over the feeling that something was wrong. Not just financially. Not just the ordinary drift that comes when a marriage gets comfortable. Something specific and operational, like a sound in an engine that doesn't belong there. The answer came 11 days before. The night I turned my face away from her kiss. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was on the couch watching a game, half asleep, when I reached for the iPad to check the score. The iPad belonged to both of us. Recipes, streaming, the occasional FaceTime with my mother. Charlene had logged into her fitness tracker app on it months back and never logged out. I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that. I hit the wrong icon. The fitness tracker opened to her activity feed. Steps, heart rate, sleep data. But there was also a location history feature, a little map that tracked her routes and destinations. I scrolled through it idly, the way you scroll through something that doesn't concern you. And then I saw it. 6 Thursdays in a row, going back to September, she had not gone to the fitness studio on Maple Ridge Drive. The GPS coordinates on those nights traced to a different address entirely. A residential street on the east side of Columbus, 12 minutes from our house. She arrived around 7. She left between 9:15 and 9:45, regular as a work schedule. I sat there for about 3 minutes without moving. A mechanic's brain works a certain way. It looks for alternative explanations before it commits to a diagnosis. I thought through every reasonable thing a person might do at a residential address on 6 consecutive Thursday evenings. I came up empty. I noted the address. I closed the app. I put the iPad back on the coffee table, exactly as I'd found it. Then I went back to watching the game because what else do you do when your world has just shifted and there's still 40 minutes left in the fourth quarter? That night, after Charlene went to bed, I called my buddy Sid. He was a former cop turned private investigator, did mostly insurance fraud cases now. But we'd been friends 15 years, and he owed me a favor I'd never called in. I called it in the next morning. Sid is efficient and discreet. By Wednesday of that week, he'd confirmed what I already knew in my gut. The address belonged to a man named Dustin. Early 30s, personal trainer, ran private sessions out of a boutique studio that wasn't the one Charlene claimed to attend. Sid got me photos. He got me time-stamped records of her car, parked outside the building. He got me more than I needed and about 10 times more than I wanted. I paid him in cash, thanked him, and drove to see a divorce attorney the next morning. Her name was Krause. Sharp, practical, no wasted words. Ohio is a no-fault state, she explained, which meant the infidelity wouldn't factor directly into asset division. But the evidence I'd gathered gave me leverage in negotiations, and the fact that I'd come in before any confrontation meant we could prepare properly. I left her office with a clear plan and a folder of intake paperwork. I stopped at the bank on the way home and had a long, specific conversation with our account manager that I'll leave at that. By Thursday evening, when Charlene was presumably at her class, everything I needed was in order. I didn't confront her Thursday or Friday. I needed the weekend to feel solid, to make sure every piece was in place. I went through the motions, Had coffees with her Saturday morning, watched TV Saturday night, grilled chicken on Sunday. I've been asked how I manage that, and honestly, I don't have a great answer. You go mechanical. You put the emotional part in a box and deal with it later. It's not healthy. It's just what you do when you need 3 more days. Monday night she came home from work at 6:30. Changed out of her work clothes, came and sat next to me on the couch. We watched the news together. Around 10, she stood up and stretched. "I'm going to bed," she said, and she leaned down to kiss me the way she had 10,000 times before. I turned my face. Her lips caught my jaw. She pulled back. "You okay?" "Save it, Charlene," I said, keeping my voice flat and even. I know exactly where that mouth has been every Thursday night. The silence lasted maybe 4 seconds. It felt like sitting in a car after the engine cuts out. That sudden, profound quiet. "What are you talking about?" she said. And her voice had gone very small. I picked up my phone from the coffee table, opened the folder Sid had sent me, and held the screen up where she could see it. She didn't say anything for a long time. She looked at the photos the way you look at something you cannot explain and cannot deny. "Silas." "Don't," I said. "Don't start with "I can explain," because there's nothing to explain. I've seen enough." It was. She stopped before she finished the sentence, which told me she knew how hollow it was going to sound. It didn't mean anything. It was a stupid what? I kept my voice flat. "A stupid accident? Charlene, you drove across town to that man's house 6 Thursday nights in a row. You told me you were at the gym. You came home, showered, and sat next to me on this couch. I let that land. You don't accidentally do that. You choose it. Every Thursday you woke up and you chose it again." She was crying now. I know, and I'm so sorry. I've already been to see a lawyer," I said. "The paperwork starts this week." She stopped mid-breath. "What?" "I've had 11 days to make decisions. I used them." "You knew for 11 days." I wanted to be ready. I stood up from the couch. "Tomorrow I need you to call in late to work so we can go over some logistics. Nothing emotional. Just practical. Attorney's orders." She looked at me like I was someone she'd never met. "You already have a lawyer named." "I've had one all week," I said. "Good night, Charlene." The weeks that followed weren't what I'd expected. I'd braced for some dramatic collapse. Can't eat, can't function, the whole thing. What I got instead was a low-grade fever that never quite broke. A constant, dull wrongness sitting behind everything I did. I went to work. I ate. I slept, mostly. I just did all of it slightly off-key. Charlene went through phases. The first was apologies. Long, detailed ones where she traced the exact timeline of how the affair had started. As if the chronology might make it easier to accept. It made it worse. The second phase was bargaining. Couples counseling, a trial separation, a vacation we'd been putting off for 2 years. I declined all of it, politely, every time. Around week 3, she enlisted allies. Her sister called. Then, a woman from her office whose name I'd never been clear on. Then, and this genuinely surprised me, an old friend of hers called to tell me that everyone makes mistakes and that I needed to be willing to grow as a person. I thanked her for calling and hung up. One Sunday I came home to find Charlene in the kitchen making my favorite meal. Pot roast, roasted potatoes, the whole production. The good plates were out. Candles lit. I stood in the doorway and looked at all that effort. For just a second, I felt something move. Not toward forgiveness, but toward sadness for what we were past. Then I thought about 6 Thursday evenings, and the photos on my phone. "I already ate," I said, and went upstairs. I heard her moving around in the kitchen for another hour, putting things away in the dark. I didn't go back down. Some doors, once you close them, stay closed. The conversation that formally ended things didn't happen over a candlelit dinner. It happened on a Thursday. Fitting, I thought, later, when I walked in from a long day. To find her sitting in the living room, arms folded, something resolved in her expression. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening." "You can't shut me out forever, Silas. We were married for 18 years. That has to mean something." "It meant a great deal," I said. Past tense. "Don't do that." Her voice cracked. "Don't act like it's already finished." "The paperwork's filed, Charlene. It is finished." She stood. So that's your answer? Walk away from everything we built? From 18 years? I set my jacket on the hook by the door and turned back to face her. I want to say something to you, and I want to say it once. What we built mattered to me, every year of it. I would have worked through anything. The job, the money, lean times, hard times. I would have done whatever you asked to fix us. But you didn't ask me to fix anything. You made a different choice, 6 times, across 6 months. And the thing is, you didn't do it because I was failing you. I was breaking my back trying to land something new, and you were telling me I wasn't doing enough. And every Thursday you were driving across town. So I don't want to hear about 18 years. You're the one who stopped counting. She didn't have an answer for that. She sat back down, and I think in that moment she understood that the conversation had been over for some time already, and I was just the last one to finish saying it out loud. I moved into an apartment the following week. 1 bedroom, 3rd floor, decent light. Sid helped me move the things I wanted. My tools, my clothes, my father's old rocking chair, a box of photos from years I was still willing to look at. Charlene reached out several more times. Texts first. Practical ones about logistics, then less practical ones about missing me. I answered the paperwork questions and left the rest on read. Eventually, she sent a handwritten letter on the good stationery from the desk drawer. Carefully worded, clearly revised multiple times. She said she'd ended things with Dustin. She asked if we could have one conversation, just the 2 of us, no lawyers. I thought about it for 20 minutes. Then I sent her a text. I wish you well, Charlene. I really do. But I've made my peace and I need you to make yours. She did not contact me after that. The divorce was finalized on a Friday in March. Krause handed me my folder of documents, shook my hand, told me I'd handled everything with unusual composure and meant it as a compliment. I drove home and sat on the balcony of my apartment with a cold beer, watching traffic move on the street below. I waited for some wave of feeling. The movies say there's a wave. What I got was quiet. An honest, earned, bone-deep quiet that comes not from emptiness, but from being finished with something that needed to be done. Sid took me to dinner that night. His treat, which told me he'd been more worried than he'd let on. We ate steaks, and he told me about his own divorce. 12 years back, the things he'd found on the other side of it. He is the reason I don't measure my whole life by one person's choices. The months that followed were some of the best of my life, and I know how strange that sounds coming from this particular story. I landed a job as fleet operations manager for a logistics company out of Dublin. Better title, better pay than the hardened position. I bought a proper bed for the apartment, and then 8 months later, bought a small house in Clintonville that needed work on the foundation, the kitchen, the back porch, and everything else. Enough projects to fill every weekend for the foreseeable future, which was exactly what I needed. My son drove up from Cincinnati one Saturday to help me pull out the old kitchen cabinets. We worked all day, ordered pizza, ate it sitting on the subfloor like we were 20 years younger. I hadn't felt that light in a long time. I met a woman at a hardware store in November, which is probably the most boring origin story imaginable, but the good ones usually are. Her name is Gail. She was trying to figure out which wood filler worked best on exterior trim. And I happened to know the answer. We talked for 20 minutes in the aisle. She was divorced 2 years prior, had a grown son, and had bought a fixer-upper of her own that was eating her alive in the best possible way. We exchanged numbers over the wood filler. 3 months later, she's at my kitchen table every Sunday morning, coffee in hand, reading something on her phone while I work through whatever project I've assigned myself that week. It's quiet and comfortable and honest, which is exactly what I needed, and what I am no longer willing to accept less of. I heard recently, through someone we both knew from the old neighborhood, that Charlene is seeing someone from her office. I felt nothing particular about that. No satisfaction, no jealousy. Just the neutral acknowledgement that she is a person living her life, and I am a person living mine, and those 2 lives no longer have anything to do with each other. 18 years is a long time, long enough that the good parts are still there somewhere, buried under things I haven't excavated yet. I don't think about her with bitterness. Mostly, I don't think about her at all, and that, I've come to understand, is its own kind of closure. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just the ordinary quiet of a life that has moved forward and genuinely means it. The foundation on the Clintonville house is solid now. I had a crew shore it up before winter. The kitchen is about 60% done. The back porch waits for spring. There's a lot of good work still left to do, and I have the time.